This is the Drake Insights Podcast, your weekly dose of cutting-edge senior living marketing insights. Join me, your host, Natasha Drake, for bold ideas, proven strategies, and inspiring stories straight from the experts. Tune in and let's conquer the senior living marketing landscape together. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Drake Insights Podcast. I'm your host, Natasha Drake from Drake Strategic. Let's get started. So on today's episode, it's now middle of November, nearing the end of November, and I've heard a lot recently, a lot of people saying, well, it's the end of the year, if we're not hitting our results, we'll just wait till first quarter and our new plan will get in place and we'll see where we are. I'm here to tell you, you don't really have to wait. What are things you can do, adjustments you can make, and not just wait for a new budget and a new plan? And I thought the best way to explain that is to just sort of tell you a story and a case study of a situation I was in and some adjustments we made. And maybe by hearing my story and hearing the case study, that will help you then understand what are some adjustments you can make. Doesn't necessarily mean more budget. In this specific situation, I'm going to tell you, we kept the budget the same. It was fourth quarter. We didn't have more money. I was brought in to make adjustments. And actually, I'm going to take a pause for a second and explain, because this came up a lot at the Leading Age conference. Let me just say that I am not a podcaster, and I really appreciate everyone thinking that that's what I do professionally. So professionally, what I do is I'm a sales and marketing strategist. I help you with certain situations you're in terms of lead generation, lead nurturing, closings, move-ins. I help you and your agency partners make adjustments to your strategies and your plan and your tactics to hit the goals and get the results that you need. And I do the podcast on the side to bring senior living industry insights to the forefront, to those that maybe haven't heard these things before, or maybe you have, but resurfacing them for you and bringing on other experts to help elevate our industry. So I wanted to just take a segue there, explain that, because that was asked of me a lot at the conference and I wanted to clarify. And so I thought this episode would be a perfect way to help you as we're ending the end of fourth quarter and give you some insight into what exactly I do. When I meet with potential clients and partners, the best way for me to explain what it is I do is to give a story and give a case study in a situation so that you can better understand how maybe what I do could help you. So back to the episode. So let's take a step back. It's mid-November. You're maybe not hitting your goals. You haven't hit your occupancy goals. You're not getting the leads you need to hit your first quarter 2025 goals. So that's something else you have to think about is, okay, have we hit our move-ins in this year? You also want to make sure you're bringing in leads, new leads, and, lead nurturing so you can close those in first quarter as well. So always preparing and thinking ahead. And so I'm here to tell you it's the middle of November. And if you watched some of my previous podcasts, this is the perfect time. This is a great time for events, for lead generating, lead nurturing. Families are together over the holidays. Perfect time to have lead generating events. As I've mentioned before, and I'll link it here in my prior episode, having a direct mail piece and an omni-channel approach with also digital tactics as well, right before Thanksgiving is a perfect time, and over Thanksgiving with an event right after, so usually like the first week of December, is a great time for lead generating event. And you can also, in between the lead generating event, you can do some really strong lead nurturing smaller events to kind of help close the loop and close the gap and further that sales along to move in. So I'll tag that here. But back to the story. So what can you do? What are things that if someone like me were to come in, what are adjustments you can make without necessarily, sometimes there is some budget, but without necessarily increasing your budget to make adjustments, increase your leads, increase your closings and your move-ins? Let me start and tell you the story. So in this specific situation, I'm not going to say names or companies or community names to keep them completely anonymous. In this situation, when I was brought in, the community was struggling, number one, with lead generation. They were not getting new leads. A few here and there, but it was a lot of re-inquiries, right? The same leads were coming in, and they also weren't converting those leads. And third thing was they also didn't have a great reputation in the market. So it wasn't a bad reputation, but it wasn't the fanciest, shiniest, newest community, right? It was a great community, doing really well, great residents, great staff. They just weren't messaging it appropriately and they weren't communicating it to the market effectively to generate new leads. So they just kept doing the same thing also over and over again. They were mailing direct mails every month to a 10,000 person list, same list over and over again. They were doing a lot of educational types of events. They were doing normal paid SEO, blogs, right? Your basic plan, okay? And when I came in, so this is just a case study situation of how someone can come in and partner and help you make adjustments with your budget to increase your results. And this is the time. November is a great time to do it. You can either do it now to finish out your fourth quarter or make these adjustments for your first quarter plan. So as I mentioned, they were struggling, only getting re-inquiries, struggling with closing those to move-ins, and struggling in the market in terms of reputation. So what did I do? I came in and I looked at their target audience first. Where are we sending these mailers? Number one, who is our target market? Are we hitting the right people? And what are our events and our messaging that's going out, right? So if these direct mailers that you're spending money on every month aren't working, it either needs to be the event, the call to action, your messaging and your branding and positioning, and then third is your target audience. So it was the first thing I took a look at. What I found was in this specific market, very highly saturated, high population. 10,000 is a pretty small number for this market where they should be targeting. So the first thing we did was made adjustments to our targeting, the specific area. So we expanded our market and tripled the size of our mailing list. Now, I know that's not necessarily going to work in every area, but this specific market, it did. Very highly populated area. So just by expanding a little bit outside of where we were actually specifically focusing, where there was a lot of potential residents that didn't have a lot of competition. So Northwest specifically of this community, there was not a lot of competitors. So where they were really focused tight on this small area, there was a ton of competition. So let's go somewhere where that middle market person might be. There's a lot more goes into this. I'm kind of just touching the surface. This was a whole meeting and we dug deep into who the specific prospect was, where we would find them, how we would target them. But I'm giving you a high level generalization of how we do this, okay? So we changed our target market, tripled our mailing list. So within the same budget, rather than doing a monthly mailer to 10,000, we could do quarterly or 5 or 6 times a year, maybe every other month, depending on the budget, to a double or triple size list. So you're mailing less frequently to a larger quantity list, which actually works better. A lot of times if you're mailing every single month to the same people, it's not going to have as much of an impact, right? Because they're going to go, well, I'll just check the mailer next month. I'll just wait till the next event. Right? And so you're better off actually hitting a larger quantity list in this specific situation. So again, I'm not saying this is the perfect workaround for every community, but in this case study. So that was the first thing we did. And actually, to take a step back, that was the second thing we did. The first thing was I met with the team. So I came on site, met with all of the ops management team, and we did a deep SOAR analysis, which if you watched the SOAR video, I will tag it here as well, is like a SWOT analysis, but it focuses more specifically on strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. And so I sat there and I wanted to hear from everyone, not just sales and marketing, but the operations team, management team, all the heads of each department to better understand this community and this market. What truly are your strengths? Because if the target audience is wrong, I need to find out who the target audience should be. And if our messaging and our events are wrong, I need to figure out who this resident is, who this prospect is, and more importantly, who this community is, so that we are messaging it correctly to the greater market. What we found was we were not positioning ourselves correctly by digging into the true unique strengths of this community. Remember, it's not the shiniest, prettiest. What we found was it was the top middle market. It was a family-like community. They all knew each other. This was a true network middle market community. This wasn't your highest end. And so where they were focusing their target audience lists on was the more higher end market. well, that prospect is necessarily going to move to this community. That's not the right community for that prospect, right? There is a community for every prospect. This wasn't it. So our messaging wasn't in line, and our tone and our positioning was not in line with who the community was. We also were doing these high-level educational events. Well, this type of middle market prospect isn't really as interested in that. They are actually much more interested in social types of events, dining, food, things that camaraderie that bring family and friends together. So we adjusted that. So the first thing we did was our SOAR SWOT analysis, truly identify the unique strengths, positioning, messaging, events for this community. The second thing we did was adjust our target audience, like I mentioned. So we expanded, we tripled our audience size and expanded at Northwest where there was no competition, going from 10,000 people, monthly mailers, to 30,000 just a few times a year. Okay, so adjusted the direct mail tactics, adjusted our audience. And then the next thing we did was adjust the type of event we were doing. So we wanted to do more of a, like I just mentioned, a social event first week of December to bring in people for the holidays, really touch them in their heart, changed our everything, our creative, the look of our mailer, the messaging and tone and positioning, and the type of event and the audience list. We sent this out and we tripled the leads from what they were previously. So on average, they were hitting around 32 leads a month. We tripled it to 122 inquiries. And the biggest change was the initial inquiries increased 10 times. They were getting on average around 5 to 7 a month. They had 71 from this mailer. And another really exciting result from this was almost 30% of those inquiries came from the new zip codes that we had targeted. So we were never attracting the right prospect, the right target audience. We had the wrong messaging and positioning and the wrong type of an event. So I wanted to explain the last thing we did to tie this all together was a true omni-channel approach. So I won't go into all the detail, but we did paid advertising, we did some content on our website, adjusted the positioning and messaging on our website, adjusted some of the blogs we were posting so that everything worked together. Because I wanna make sure I reiterate that it's really important. You don't just adjust one tactic. It's a whole holistic process. You start with a SOAR meeting, you get to understand the community and the prospect, you adjust your target audience list, make sure you're really targeting the right person that would move into this community. You adjust then your creative and your messaging and your events for your direct marketing. And then you adjust the rest of your mediums. So your direct paid media, your email that's going out, your lead nurturing campaign, your content on your website, your social campaign. Everything now needs to make adjustments. You need to change your messaging, the design, the creative perhaps, right? So it goes along with that right tone, that right audience, that they'll react to it. And by doing so, you are going to triple your results. Now, this is more focused on initial inquiries, right? Because that was the biggest problem. They were not receiving initial inquiries barely at all. So this tactic was really to generate a lot of leads in fourth quarter that then the team had a really big influx of leads to work and nurture in first quarter or at the end of fourth quarter. Another thing we did here that I want to talk about is we then, by nurturing those leads, we also wanted to have a strong first quarter plan as well. So now that it's mid-November, you might be thinking, okay, Natasha, I can't do all these adjustments right now. You may be able to. Adjusting your target audience list, you can move those numbers around. Now, I understand that you may have already paid for that. You might not have the budget for that right now, so that's a different story. But can you be more targeted? Can you adjust maybe who you're mailing to at different times? Think about that. If not, then adjust your target audience list for first quarter. You may be out of time to do a direct mail this quarter, then plan for it for next quarter. See what are things you can do. What are some small adjustments you can do now? The biggest thing, the easiest thing is to adjust your positioning and your creative, right? And your messaging and your events. You can certainly do that. If you already have in your budget a plan to do an event and a direct mail right after Thanksgiving, let's make those adjustments now before it's too late so you can really get the results that you need. Another little tip I want to give you here that worked really well specifically for this community is if you're out of time for fourth quarter and you're adjusting your plan now for first quarter, as I mentioned in the prior event episode, an end of January lead generating event of some kind typically can be very successful, is a survey mailer. So again, that doesn't work for every single market or every community. But if you're in a situation like this case study is that I'm telling you, it will have huge impact. So this community, as I mentioned, did not have a great reputation in the market, was not getting initial inquiries. So we had to expand the target market. So most of the audience was not aware of this community, nor did they understand who they truly were, right? Because they weren't messaging themselves properly. So by sending out a survey mailer, and with it, and I can go into this in more detail if you want more information, but in it, you're surveying the community of what their interests are, and at the same time, you're educating them on who you are. So we're telling you about us, tell us about you, so we can better refine who we are and what our community offers. This is a great way to reposition, adjust your positioning and your messaging, and get that new positioning and brand out specifically to this new audience and to the market. So we sent this out, like I mentioned, to that triple-sized mailing list. And those numbers I mentioned earlier, we tripled our results. I mean, we had an average 122 inquiries from this, and over 30% were from this new zip code. And the initial inquiries increased by 10 times that. So we were averaging between 50 and 75 on this mailer. So this was a great tactic. And then it set that team up for success for the next year, because you're bringing a lot of new leads early in the year that you can then work on lead nurturing and lead advancement events throughout the rest of the year. So I hope that's helpful. It's a very high-level case study situation, and it helps you understand a little bit more about what I do or someone like me can do to help you or to help your agency. I can come in and look at all the issues you're having and the puzzle pieces and put them all together. Again, we didn't have to really increase much budget here. I was able to adjust the plan's budget, cut some things, add some things. Instead of doing a monthly mailer, do a bi-monthly or a quarterly mailer to it so that your budget stays pretty relatively close, but you're able to adjust your target audience, the amount of mailers, the messaging, the creative to hit the right audience, and it will triple your results. So you're going to get a lot of impact and a lot of response without a huge increase in budget. So little things you can do. Now, a lot of times, communities need a lot more work, right? I mean, they need a brand new website, things that maybe cost a lot more money, but sometimes there are little solutions we can do and little adjustments in tactics and things and messaging that we're doing that can really have a big impact. So I hope this episode was helpful. And if you have any further questions, I'm happy to dig in more, but I really like doing these case study types of podcast episodes, because sometimes I think it's easier for people to understand maybe how to fix some of the issues they're having or what to adjust by hearing a story and telling a story of maybe another community and things that they did that maybe can relate to you or ways that might help you in your community. So thank you for listening to another episode of the Drake Insights podcast. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye. Real quick, if you enjoyed watching the podcast today, please follow me and subscribe so you're notified for the next podcast. And if you have any questions or want to talk after about anything that Drake Strategic can provide for you, please reach out to me, call me, email me, or visit our website at drakestrategic.com.